Hi, and welcome to the Profitable Franchisees podcast. My name is Tracey Leak, and I'm your host. This is the podcast where we bring powerful stories and strategies to help you to be a more profitable franchisee. And in today's episode, you're with me today, and I'm talking about the role of leadership in franchise success. Now, the first thing we need to understand about leadership is that leadership is not something you gain just by having a title. Just because you're the owner of your franchise business does not necessarily mean you're the leader. Okay, you should be, but just by having that title does not immediately give you a leadership position. You have to demonstrate your leadership skills, talents, and behaviors to actually be considered a leader. And this is where a lot of business owners go wrong. They go, just because I'm the owner, that now makes me the leader. And I learned this one from a group of franchisees I was talking to, and they talk about that in a group, you have to find the unofficial leader. So it might not be the person who has the leadership title, but they absolutely have the power in the dynamics of the group as the leader. You do not want one of your team being the unofficial leader. You need to be the leader in your team. So remember too that when we talk about leadership as a franchisee, you might be saying, "Hey, I'm a solo operator. I'm a mobile brand, or it's just me. I don't have a lot of employees." That does not mean you don't have a team that you can lead. In a franchise group, you have a leadership responsibility, one within all the other franchisees. Even if you're a solopreneur, a sole trader, you might have a leadership position within the franchise group. Okay, with the other franchisees. Remember too that people on your team are not just always employees. They might be your suppliers. They might be people you outsource to. Your family and friends are a part of your team. The most successful franchisees usually have really great friends and family support because they're on your team. So don't think that leadership means it's just about having employees. This is where I wanted to get you away from that thought that just because you're a business owner, you're now a leader. Absolutely, you need to step up and become a leader, but by getting the title does not automatically make you a leader. And have different leaderships in different groups. It's the same thing as saying, I see a lot of franchisees, they get onto the franchise advisory council and they might be the chairperson of that advisory council. And so all of a sudden they take on this persona that they're now the leader, but they're not actually leading. They've been given a title, but that doesn't mean they're actually demonstrating a leadership behavior. And so we have to really work on that. And leadership is something that you can learn. And the best way to learn about leadership is from watching leaders lead. I think that by reading biographies and stories of people who've been put in situations where they have to learn how to be a leader, especially in high pressure situations, there's so much you can learn about leadership from that. So everything I'm talking about today is things that I've actually learnt from other people. And they're things that I think are important in leadership. Is this a complete list? Absolutely not. And everyone's going to be a little bit different in which things work for them as a leader. You have to discover the type of leader you are. So leadership isn't easy. If it was, everybody would do it. Okay. It's not a popularity contest. Sometimes being the leader, you're going to have to make a decision that people are not going to be happy with. But you've always got to think as the leader that you're doing things for the greater good. I always talk to franchisors about this because a franchisor needs to be a leader for the head office team and all of the franchisees. The best franchise brands have someone in that leadership role who actually leads. Okay, be that the founder, the CEO, the general manager, national operations manager, whoever may be in that leadership titled position, that they actually follow that up with good leadership behavior and skills and values and ethics. You'll find that that franchise brand will be more profitable. The franchisees will be more profitable if the founder or the CEO of the franchise group is actually demonstrating great leadership traits. So, this is a twofold thing. We want to see where it's at. But sometimes a franchisor, and I'm using this example because it's a really easy one to see, sometimes they need to make a decision that's good for the brand, but not great for individual franchisees. And that's because they've got to look at the bigger picture. And that's something that I noticed that really good leaders are good at. They're good at making tough decisions even when they have opposition to it, when they know it's not going to be right for everyone, but they're making the best decision. You know, in a previous life, I was a radiographer. I don't know if you knew that or not, but when I first left school, I have a degree in radiography. So I used to take x-rays and CT scans and things like that. When you go to emergency in a hospital, there's always a triage nurse. And so they have to triage patients. And so it's not a first come, first served basis. It's based on how urgent you need care. Now, does that please everyone? Absolutely not, because when a mother is sitting outside in the waiting room with a child that's sick and grumpy and needs to be seen, and they've been waiting 2 hours, the problem is they don't know through the back emergency ambulance doors there's been a 10-car pile up and they've got people in critical condition who need to be seen first. So that triage nurse is going to get that flack from the mother sitting in the waiting room saying, "Oh, we've been waiting so long, why can't you be seen?" But they've had to make a leadership decision to triage, to say, "Hey, you're not as urgent as the people coming in via ambulance. I'm sorry." And that's always what I always thought when I was in a hospital, because it's hard because the people in the waiting room out the front don't actually see the ambulances coming out the back. I always thought they should have the ambulance door going straight past the waiting room so people go, "Oh, okay, that's maybe why they're taking a little bit of time to see me." All right. It should be on a bit more display. So when you think about it, in a leadership position, it's not a popularity contest. You want to be respected as a leader. That does not necessarily always mean that you're liked. And to be a great leader, you've got to come to terms with that you're not always going to be liked. And this is really hard for anyone who likes to be liked. It's probably one of the hardest things to get your head around as a leader, is that you're not going to be liked all of the time. And so you've got to get really good at that. The other thing that I find that really good leaders do well is they're really calm in their emotions. Like, they breathe and they think before they speak. And this is something that I personally need to work on in my leadership style. You know, I've learned to stop before I speak, but oftentimes my initial thoughts are not great. Sometimes I would just want to say to someone the truth, like, "Could you just get the heck out of here? You're the problem. You're the negative one. Leave." Okay. But that's not a great leadership trait. Okay. So understanding how to be calm under pressure, and especially also when someone's opposing you. You know, it's understanding how to actually listen to them, validate what they're saying, and then make a decision from there. You don't want to react to people. You know, you've got to be calm and you've got to listen to all sides so that people feel like they're seen and heard, even if what they're saying is totally against everything that you think. So learning to think before you speak is a massive thing as a leader. So understanding being calm under pressure, validating people, listening to them, making them feel seen and heard, and also coming back with a reasonable, logical response. You can't work on that gut emotion as a leader. You've got to actually learn how to push through that and give the best possible answer. So if you find you're highly emotional, it might be something you need to work on so that you're not just flying off the handle about things, okay? And this is not just in a negative sense either. It's also in a positive sense too. Like, you know, just because someone's come to you with an idea and you're like, "Oh, that sounds great. That's exciting. Let's get started." And you haven't actually stopped and thought about the implementation of that idea, or that idea is actually going to take you off track instead of keeping you on track. It's not always people coming at you in an aggressive or a negative manner. It might actually be calm, breathing and thinking before you speak when someone's coming to you with a great idea, because it might be a great idea, but it might not be a great idea for right now. So understanding how to learn not to react straight away. I think a great activity to do is to actually sit down with pen and paper. If you haven't been listening to the podcast, you know I'm a fan of getting out pen and putting it to paper. But think about, who do you see as a leader and why? You know, think about all the people in the world. You don't have to know these people. You might know them. You know, it might have been your, you know, grade 10 basketball coach, but it also could be a leader in the world that is a celebrity. You know, it doesn't matter who it is, but I want you to think about who it is that you see as a leader and what are their traits that you really admire? What is it about them that you admire? So as an example, you might say, well, Richard Branson is a leader and it's his creativity. That's the trait that you really like about him. So nobody else needs to know who these leaders are. Say it was your grade 10 basketball coach and you say, oh, they were really good at including everyone. Like they really made sure we understood where we all fit in the team and they made sure everybody felt as if they were part of the team. Think about who you see as a leader and the traits that they display that makes you think that they're a leader. Once you've done this, and I sort of mind map it, circle in the middle leadership, little spider legs out, name of the person plus the traits. It can just be all in point form. This is for you. But then go back and look at all of those traits and go, right, how am I demonstrating that trait? Is that something that I'm naturally good at? Or is that something I need to improve on? How is that representing in my leadership style? Because I guarantee you won't write down a trait that's not important to you. And this is where you start to develop your own leadership style. What are the things that actually, come to you when you think of a leadership? And these are the things that we want to start embodying, or you want to start embodying, because we'll all have slightly different things. Like I really believe in integrity and honesty. I like really calm leaders that, are really concise and thinking about what's actually moving forward. I'm just going through my head right now. Who do I see as a leader? I really like leaders who are able to make decisions in pressured times, that they're able to actually logically think through something when everybody else is losing their heads, that they're actually remaining calm and finding a way to move forward. I love leaders that have a little bit of a humorous style to them, that they can implement a bit of fun. It doesn't have to be all serious, that they can actually see it. I love leaders with common sense. It should probably be called uncommon sense because less people have it, but people who have common sense who can say, no, let's just simplify this down. This is what we need to do. Once you actually understand who you see as leaders and what their traits are, success leaves clues. So let's go looking for them. This will help you to shape and mold your own leadership style. So are you demonstrating these behaviors and these values of the people who want to actually follow you? Okay, so we've looked at who we see as leaders, but let's think about the people we're leading. Who do they see as leaders? What are the behaviors or the values or the traits that they want to actually follow? Because if you're not being a great leader and not taking into account what your team actually needs, you're going to miss out. Now, this is not changing your style to match them. Come up with your leadership style, but then just discover what are the important things to them, because maybe it's not changing your style, it's just how much you weight it on different traits. But understanding who your team sees as leaders and what the traits and behaviors and values they see as important will also help you to become a better leader. So again, that same activity is a great activity to do with your team. Ask them who they see as leaders in the world and what traits they have, because the best leaders actually develop and create more leaders. You want your team to become leaders because everybody can be a leader. It doesn't have to be a leader at all times. They might be a leader in that moment. Think in the franchise world, right? So the franchisor, if we look at the entire franchise group, the franchisor, the founder or the CEO, by title should be the official head leader, okay? But that doesn't mean they need to be the leader at all points in time. Okay, so we go to the marketing team at head office. Well, the marketing manager might be the leader when we're talking about a national marketing strategy. When we're talking about how to help franchisees more, it might be the field support managers or the support manager of the group who is the leader at that point in time. Great leaders know how to develop more leaders. So by understanding what traits they see as leadership, you can start to help your team to develop their own leadership styles at the same time as you're developing your own. So I've got one final point for you around leadership. I don't want to make this a really long podcast today. This is a short and sharp podcast talking about leadership. I want you to start thinking of yourself as a leader. But the big one is leaders make mistakes, and it's okay. It's not about the mistake you make. It's about what you do next. What do you do with that mistake? How do you fix it? What do you do to overcome it? You're a human being. you're going to make mistakes. When people think that you've got to be some perfect leader who never makes a mistake, well, you're destined for failure, okay? Leaders make mistakes, but it's what they do next that determines their leadership. And do they learn from their mistakes? Do they find strategies and processes and systems for that not to happen again? If something's not working, do they keep looking for solutions? Leaders are usually solution focused. They go, hey, this isn't working. What could we change? How could we do it differently? And then if that doesn't work, they go, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And they'll keep going. That persistence to actually find a solution that works is what is key to leadership. So it's having that dynamic of being able to change and move with the times. They're not so rigid that everything has to stay the same, but at the same time, they're persistent enough to keep finding things until they find the right solution. But understand, as a leader, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Especially as you're learning to be a leader and developing your leadership style, you're going to have to try on different things. It's a bit like going to go buy a dress, all right, or buy some new clothing. You're going to have to try on a few things to find the one that fits you best, the one that suits you the most. Don't think that just because you try on the first thing that it's the right thing for you. So understand that with leadership. Start discovering your leadership style. So remember, if you're in business, you're a leader, but it's not always just because of your title. It's about who you become. Everybody has a time and a place to be a leader. So start to develop your style so when you're given the opportunity to lead, you know exactly what you need to do and how you're going to go about it. Because when you can lead a team effectively, imagine the result you get. The franchisees that are the most profitable are the ones who have really started to or have discovered their best leadership style and how they grow and develop that leadership, because it's always changing, it's always continuing, and they're always growing and learning to be more. If you want to improve your leadership style, I highly recommend reading biographies or stories about people put into leadership positions, especially in crisis or tough times, where they've been put to the pressure to actually demonstrate that leadership. And it's amazing what you'll learn from leadership. Okay, so that's the end of the podcast today. If you haven't yet already signed up to the Franchisee Profit Pulse, my fortnightly newsletter, just come over to my website at traceyleak.com. It's a good companion to the podcast. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, make sure wherever you're watching or listening to this, hit the subscribe button so you get notification when the next podcast is out, which should be next week. All right, see you later, guys. Bye.